And here we are live. Good evening, folks. It's Wednesday. It's January 6th. Is this Ukrainian Christmas, by the way? Isn't it January 6th? So I'm just being told by my daughter that I'm backpedaling from 4 years of worshiping Donald Trump. So I'm going to get a little distracted with some of the messages still popping up in there. So it just came off a heated conversation with my daughter, who is diametrically opposed to my politics. So there it is. We'll just leave it at that. I told her if she wanted to keep talking, I was going to air it. So, because she told me to stop talking, and then I got to turn my sound off. Sorry, I haven't done that yet. You're seeing the seedy underbelly of what goes on in my show while I'm trying to turn off my phone from dinging. And by the way, yeah, it's me. It's Scotty Roberts. You're right here on the Odyssey Radio Network, listening to my show, the Intrepid radio program. You're also watching on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. For anybody who's picking this up and isn't here already, best part about this channel is the live chat room with the fellow Intrepids. That's you guys over there in my right-hand column. That's going on right now. So I want to thank you all for being here tonight. And so you all know what's going on today. The news is no big surprise, I think, for anybody right now. And of course, it sparked a lot of conversations. And of course, as I was talking about it, I was posting things on my Facebook, on social media, mostly for good conversation, to be able to talk about these things back and forth with people. Because you know what? We're in COVID. All those of you who are big COVID supporters of all the COVID shutdowns and lockdowns and lockups and sequestrations and quarantines, we're in COVID, so we don't get out that much. So I share this stuff with people and we talk about it. And I made the statement. If you saw the title for tonight's show, let me get my exact wording on that. My exact wording was the title for tonight's show: we are living in exciting times. And somebody said, "Oh, I wouldn't say exciting. It's more like sad times." It's like, shut up. I know exactly what I'm talking about, and so do you. Don't try to quibble with me. It's like my kids, where I say, "Hey, clean your plate." Well, it's not technically a plate, it's a bowl. It's like, shut up and go clean your plate. Rinse it off in the sink. So, so my daughter just said to me, it's almost like you're backpedaling from 4 years of absolute support for the president after he helped break constitutional law. Did he? Those of you in the chat room, those of you hearing my voice, did the president break constitutional law? Really? Why don't you think about that? And before you go spouting off that phrase, if you don't like the president, you better know what the hell you are talking about when it comes to constitutional law. By the way, in case those of you who are new to the show tonight don't know it, we don't talk about politics on this show. Not very much. I have off and on, more often, since the whole election fiasco started. And I've talked about that several times. I try not to make this a political show because I want to talk about other things. I want to talk about Enoch. I want to talk about the Golden Spiral. I want to talk about Native American issues. I want to talk about history and archaeology. I want to talk about first century Christianity. I want to talk about paganism. I want to talk about Gnosticism, which we've done several times. Struggling for the word for some reason. These are all the things we talk about on the show. I talk about ghosts. I talk about Bigfoot. I don't care. I love talking about politics, but I don't love it because it gets my juices going. I talk about politics because it enrages me. It pisses me off sometimes. I'm tired of watching political games being played. I'm tired of the blindness of some people. If you're going to tell me that President Trump broke constitutional law, you better be able to, right on the heels of saying that, spout what constitutional law he has violated. Unless you're listening to people like Nancy Pelosi and her ilk, they'll come up with anything unless it works. This is what proves to you it's all a political game that's being played. You're being played. I'm being played. So we have to open our eyes to it. Now, for the record, I voted for Donald Trump. You all know that. I supported him. There were certain things he did that I didn't like. And I stated, I don't like that he did that. I don't like that he said that. But when somebody wants to come to me and wants to argue or debate me about all of this stuff, don't pull out of the dirty sock sitting in the corner of your room you worship Trump. Fuck that. I do not worship Trump, and pardon my Effenheimer. You know, I like to say the F word. It's a fun word. We've talked about that on this show. We're adults. We all know what that word means. I like using the word because it's a fun word. I don't like using it because I'm pissed off. I like talking about, what fuckery are you listening to? Or things like that in different forms of the word. I enjoy that. I enjoy using the word. But I don't like to use it just to show how pissed I am. But it does roll off my tongue every now and then. Delaney Pearl Jones, how you doing? She's got a new video. Put your link up there, Delaney. Let people see it. Dustin Brill, good to see you, brother. Siani is here too because he's saying hi to you, or he's talking to you. I couldn't care less about dead bodies. Assholes just ruined it for me. Not sure what you're talking about. I'd have to go back and look at the context. Audrey, it's good to see you. Nice to have you here. I hope Niall's here. Niall and I had a little exchange earlier. And he says, I know where you're going tonight. Because he saw a post of mine. Well, I hope you're here, Niall, and I hope you enjoy this. But then again, it's 3:00 in the morning in Ireland. So you should be in bed, young man. Roger Rabbit, good to see you. And Matt Finn, I'm pretty sure I saw Matt Finn in here. I might be mistaken. No, I don't see Matt Finn yet tonight. Matt, wherever you are, have a nice night. Iowa X, good to see you. Your crusty sock of Trump. Shut up, Iowa X. No, the crusty old sock out of which we pull out crusty old isms. I don't worship anybody. Not human anyway. And I even have a problem worshiping deities. You know, we've talked about plenty of deities on this show. We've talked about, does deity exist the way we think it does? Is there a God? Is there a creator? Is there an originator? Is there a savior? We've talked about these things, not because I disagree or want to create problems for anybody, but because I want us to talk about them. Let's air it. Let's get it out in the open. Same thing with Donald Trump. I've supported him as president. What happened today? I lost a viewer already. I just saw a number go down. I must have said something, or somebody's not interested, or it's not going the way they thought it should go. Hey, Kelly Bolt, good to see you. And you missed coming here at 7 p.m.? Oh, Kelly, are you out on the West Coast? Or west of the Rockies, so to speak? So, yeah, brother, love the adventure was ruined for me by friends who didn't believe in me much, said Dustin Brill. It was the F-bomb. Sorry about that. The F-bomb. Oh, I've lost 2 people. I think I'm not going fast enough and in the right direction that some people would hope that this show would go. I wanted to talk about a little bit today about what happened today in Washington, D.C. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I take the position that I take. And I don't think, number one, challenging an election is constitutionally protected. Go look up the articles. I didn't call them up in front of me because I wasn't going to give a lesson on civics or constitutional law. But constitutional law, if you're going to quote that somebody's violating it, you better know what the hell point of the constitutional law they are violating. Because number one, the president of the United States, if he is an incumbent in an election, if a challenger to the president of the United States in an election, if they believe that there was election fraud or election problems, irregularities, if they think the vote was too close, if they think something looked bad, you know what they have a right to do under constitutional election law? They can challenge the election. Boom. End of story. Period. This is a constitutional challenge. Now, if Donald Trump is acting unconstitutionally, remove his ass from which is going to be gone in 2 weeks anyway. Oh, I did hear that Ilhan Omar, that bright shining star in the House of Representatives from Minnesota, who strangely enough got reelected, she filed or started drafting papers of impeachment of Donald Trump today. Can you believe that? Because of what some people did, Donald Trump didn't tell anybody to go smash windows. He didn't tell anybody to break into the Capitol. He didn't tell them to riot. He said, we are it was his tweet before they locked it up. We are the law and order party. Respect our men and women in blue. Be peaceful, he said to them. He held a rally today. He's got his personal beliefs. You know what? He's the president of the United States. Let him have his fucking personal belief about the election. He's got a hell of a lot of people in much higher positions than you or I who believe that there was some wrongdoing in the election. It's like one of those things. I've been struggling for weeks with a good example, and I'm not coming up with one, but it's usually in a fictional story where something's gone on and all of it's been revealed to the reader of the book or the viewer of the movie. Something has happened, yet there is no way for the protagonist of that particular story to be able to prove it. Or how many times have we seen movies or read books where the protagonist is accused of something and everything stacks up against them, and there is no way possible that they're able to prove their way out of it. But we all know that it's wrong. So what do you do with that when that happens? So what do you do when it looks like, because of all these criteria all along the way, that the election was, we can use the boo-hoo line and say, oh, the election was stolen. Boo-hoo. I don't use that term. I say I believe that there were irregularities. I believe it caused some fraud. I think that there were things that were done from behind the scenes. It's like my good friend Sarah. Sarah, if you're listening, Sarah Bergovit, she put up a little meme, and I talked about this the other day, and I'm going to bring it up again now. If you went out to the jungle and you gathered up 100 red ants and put them in a jar, and then you took 100 black ants, put them in the same jar and put a lid on, set it down, those ants would coexist just fine. Take that jar and shake it up. Then open it up and release them. What happens? They will fight with each other to the death of almost every one of them. So the big question is this: are you fighting somebody, or is somebody else shaking our jar? I believe the latter. The jar's being shaken from the outside. Can I prove that? Not with my limited resources, no. But you have to look at human behavior. You have to look at mob mentality, group mentality. You have to look at, we've talked about it on the show. We talk about psychology on the show all the time. We talked about the psychology of group think. What happens in those groups? That psychology will tell us that we lump together with people of like mind and we oppose those who don't think the way we do. It's not because we want to have a war with anybody or fight necessarily. We just say, well, you're in the other group. You're in that group that thinks that way. And we stick with the people that we like, that we think like us, that like-mindedness. So I have a lot of friends out there that are conservative. I have a lot of friends that are liberal. For the first time in my life, many of these people are people I've known for a very long time. But only in the last 2 to 3 years has been the first time in my life I have ever had a friend who thinks differently politically from me, separate from me, end a friendship with me. I don't end friendships with people. I love my friends. I love life. I love having interaction with my friends. I don't give a good goddamn what they think politically. Now, we can argue, we can debate. I've had all kinds of debates with friends of mine. I never parted ways with somebody because, I don't know, he thought that fairies exist and I believed that they didn't, or vice versa. Never parted ways with anybody over a disagreement in belief system. But suddenly it's okay now to part ways with people because you disagree with them. Fuck. Who the hell cares if you disagree? Who's shaking your jar? Somebody on the outside shakes the jar. And you know what? Because they shake that jar, you start fighting and warring. And people who love each other fight and war over something. I will say something sometimes to be provocative. Now, I'm not lying to anybody, but I will put out there a thought like I did today. I said, wow, we sure are living in exciting times. And do you know, when I first heard that there was an attack in Washington, D.C., that somebody moved on somebody else, that there was a breaching of the Capitol, I kind of smiled at first. And I went, well, it's about time. And I think I put an Effenheimer in there too. It's about effing time that somebody did something. And I said to the person I happened to be talking to at the time, I said, wasn't it Thomas Jefferson that said, this country is going to need a little revolution every 20 years or so? Did we see a revolution when people were tearing down Confederate statues? When people, in the name of all that's good, were tearing down our history? In the name of all, and I'm not talking about flying a Confederate flag. If somebody wants to fly a Confederate flag, that's their own goddamn business. Let them fly a flag. There were times I had a Hobbit flag hanging from my house for my kids. Ooh, flying the wrong flag. I don't care what flag you fly, so long as you don't push your beliefs on me or try to change my government over it. Now, some people would look at the fact that I had a Trump flag flying on one staff of my front deck and an American flag on the other. The Trump 2020 flag, you've seen them all over the place, those blue flags. Some people would have a problem with it. You're trying to change my government. No, I thought Trump was doing something good for government. You may not have liked him. You may not have liked the way he did things. You may not have liked his personality. He may have been too damn egotistical for you. Oh, boo-hoo, boo the fuck who. So what? Was he smart about what he was doing? Was he trying to accomplish a goal? Yeah, I think he was. Didn't agree with the way he carried about everything, but I agreed with most of what he was trying to implement. People who say, I didn't come laden with a list here tonight because I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I'm just shooting from the hip tonight, folks. I've had people say to me, well, what did Trump ever accomplish? He's accomplished nothing in 3.5 years. This was a few months ago. And I went and I looked up a list of all the things Trump has accomplished. And I had a list that was so long, it took 4 posts on Facebook at bullet points to be able to list them all. And I said, you may not agree with everything on this list, but these are his accomplishments. Whatever. Somebody would argue that, he shouldn't have treated the EPA that way. I disagree with what he accomplished there. That's not an accomplishment. That's a setback. Well, for you, maybe. Not for a bunch of other people. So that kind of thing. There's always disagreements on stuff. So you know what? Let disagreements exist. So what? Move the hell on from disagreements. We can talk about politics. We can debate it. As soon as you start personalizing it against somebody else, you've crossed the line. Now, let me ask you, at what point, and I'm inciting nothing, YouTube, I'm not inciting anything. I'm asking a question. Can we have reasoned debate and dialogue about things without being cited for doing something bad? I want to talk about this whole thing about inciting. I want to talk about this thing about revolution. Are those things that happen naturally? Something happens and a people turn. There's either rebellion. Is all revolution rebellion? You define the word rebellion and find out it's mostly a negative word. We look at it as a negative thing. If you're a parent and you have a rebellious child, that's not a good thing. If you're in the office or at work or wherever you're doing, you rebelled against the boss's rules, that's not a good thing. So rebellion is generally looked at as not being a good thing. Can revolution be a good thing? Was the American Revolution a bad thing? It was a rebellion. Well, in the eyes of the British king, it was a bad thing. And so we say, God save the king, such a simple thing, and you can't do it. And the Americans are saying, I don't live my life by your leave. Not by your leave. So, was the American Revolution, the rebellion against the British crown, was that a bad thing? Oh, we're such a bad people. We started in badness, and we're continuing in badness. I've seen more people degrade people who think differently than they do on the political issue. I was talking about the Declaration of Independence. We were a bad people. Bad. We did bad things to the British king. We even killed some of his soldiers back 250 years ago. Listen to this. This is how bad we were 250 years ago. In Congress, July 4th, 1776. Listen to this. It's important. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. This was written to the British king. This is rebellion. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. Ooh, this sounds an awful lot like rebellion, doesn't it? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, derived from their just powers, the consent of the governed. The consent of me, of you. that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, of what ends? Of you and me. It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and their happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, or we could say totalitarianism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. And then they go and they list all the items. So, some would look today as if I'm quoting the Declaration of Independence, someone, if I was doing it on Facebook, somebody who didn't like it would just report me and I'd be thrown in Facebook jail for 30 days without any kind of a recourse. I'm inciting something. I'm inciting revolution and rebellion. Oh, because I'm reading the Declaration of Independence. The only point I am making is that revolutionaries 250 years ago were the bad guys in the eyes of the government that existed at the time. So, are people who support Trump and are willing to... This is where I'll be a little careful. Not in the way I'm saying things. I'm not being careful for fear of offending anybody. But let me ask you something. When Thomas Jefferson said, "This country will not long survive unless it has a little revolution." I'm mixing up two quotes. He said, "This country will have to have a little revolution every 20 years or so." And I think he even said in another place, he said something about the tree of liberty. It's a paraphrase, must be watered with the blood of revolutionaries every 20 years or so, or something to that effect. I don't have the quotes in front of me. I'm going all off the seat of my pants tonight. So when a people have a problem with their government and the way they are being governed, we have elected officials in this country that allow us a recourse to the government. We are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. We have representatives that are of the people. We hire them, we fire them. We tell them what to do. But don't take that too far, because then, now you're violating constitutional law, somebody might say, without not understanding one single whit of what constitutional law even says. I guarantee you the half a dozen people today who said things to me like, "Well, Trump's in violation of constitutional law." I'll bet you those people wouldn't be able to quote a line from the Constitution, let alone know what the hell they're talking about. I had one person who was kind of agreeing with my train of thought today, said something, "Well, I think this," and somebody else I know that's very much on the left came in and said, You have no goddamn right to say what you think here. It's, who asked you what you think? And I said, she has every right to think. I said, don't you think? You express your thoughts to me all the time from a differing point of view. And I said, I let you talk. You're allowed to have your opinion. And I'm seeing that chat room just going by and by and by, and I haven't responded to anybody. Sorry about that. Niall says, America has always had a slightly schizophrenic view of itself as a nation. They're not quite sure who they are, but they know how to arrange their own space. Well, to a point, I think we know who we are, Niall. I'm not going to disagree with you just for the sake of disagreeing with you. I think Americans do know who they are. We do know what our rights are. We do know why we were founded and upon what principles we were founded. Oh, unless you're coming up in school nowadays. They don't teach that anymore, so you're not going to know it. You need a drink of water. I remember, it's a good time for just a little sidetrack story. Back when, do you remember the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson when that came out? I believe it was in 1996, something like that. Maybe a year or two later. Now, I was doing I was part of this troupe. We did living history. We were doing the Scottish regiment, the 42nd Royal Highlanders, dressed in the British redcoats and our muskets. And, I got my musket back here. I still don't have the lock put into this, by the way, for those of you who are wondering. But, I've got my musket. I've got the lock out of it because I'm cleaning it. But, we had the muskets and the swords, that sword up there, the Scottish basket hilt. And we did our little reenactments. We went to big reenactments too, battle reenactments and stuff like that. Well, when the movie The Patriot came out, we got invited to go set up our wares in the lobby of the theater at the Mall of America, the cinema there. And so we had 20 of us guys, all in full uniform, red coats and kilts and muskets and swords. And this is 1995. We could still carry a musket in the Mall of America for theatrical purposes. And so we interacted with the people in the lobby there. And before each showing of the movie, it was premiere night, we would go down, march down. They bring up the house lights. We would march the whole troop with muskets up, and we'd march down to the front and spread across the front of the theater below the big screen. And our captain would read from the Stamp Act. He just took it right out of history, that people would have to house, after tonight's performance, each one of you will have to take home with you 2 soldiers and house them and feed them and blah, 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 in service to your king. And people would start booing in the audience, of course, and mock boo. And he would look up over the Stamp Act and he'd go, fix bayonets, and we'd all, go through the maneuvers. And so we did that. And I remember out in the lobby, we would ask people questions in character. And we'd say, who is your king? Who is your king? Yeah, so we're in a Scottish brogue, who's your king? And, looking for George II. And they're like, I don't know. What we got was people didn't know their own history. They didn't know who the king was that we were rebelling against in the American Revolution. I asked who was the leader of our country, the leader of our military at the time. He became the first president of the United States, and some people struggled with that one. And we're like, really? You don't know Georgie Washington? And, we would ask those kinds of questions, and we'd mingle with people and so on. What that impressed upon me at the time, even though it was in a pop cultural setting and very casual, people didn't know their own history. So when I say, and I mock and I say, people nowadays might not even know what their history is because it's not being taught anymore. This is 25 years later, and you know what? They still don't know it. They don't know it any better now than they did then. So, and again, I'm not ignoring you in the chat room. We'll get over there. If I see something, I'll comment on it if I glance over there. So, thank you, Siani. It is a nice gun. Why, thank you, ma'am. And here, I've got one on this side and I've got one on this side. No, and the lock mechanism is sitting over there somewhere. It's being cleaned. So, because of that oxidization that just from hanging on the wall. So anyway, I'm trying to think of where my mind's track was and get back on that track. We're talking about revolution and rebellion. Did those people in Washington, D.C. today have a right to protest? Yes, they did. You know what protest is? It's a form of rebellion. It's a form of revolution. It is protected by our Constitution. As long as you are not hurting other people and you are gathering peaceably, you have a right to speak your mind in the public square. You have a right to protest. The only time that right to protest starts to get limited is when you hurt others or you incite people to violence. Somebody said to me today that my post saying we live in exciting times said I was inciting violence. I said, I'm not condoning any violent acts. And by the way, when I first put up that post, I had mentioned that there are people I know through a friend of mine who is saying that they're on the ground in Washington, D.C., they're saying that the people who stormed the Capitol building were not the Trump protesters. There were 50,000 of them. There weren't that many people. You can't fit 50,000 people into the rotunda of the Capitol. There were people standing on the Capitol steps. You know what? You stand on the Capitol steps to deliver speeches. You can defy the government as long as you're not breaking a law or inciting violence. You can stand on the Capitol steps and say your piece. There are more people over the last 200 years, well, however the Capitol building has been there, almost 200 years. I think it was burned in 1812, wasn't it? That was the White House. You can stand on those Capitol steps and pronounce your grievances. You can protest. It's allowed. It's constitutionally protected. What you cannot do is start damaging property. You start smashing a window or breaking down a door, you are violating the law. And you are marked for arrest and detention and possibly jail time. This is your government. You don't fuck with the government or its property. So those people there today had come from a rally with Donald Trump, who people said, well, Donald Trump was telling them to break down windows. And I said to somebody who's a friend of mine, I said, you are woefully misinformed. Donald Trump told that crowd today at his rally in front of the White House, which is a 10, 15-minute walk over to the Capitol building, depending on how fast or slow you're going down the mall in D.C. He told them, we are the party of law and order. Be peaceable. Respect the men and women in the blue uniform. That's what he was telling them. Of course, he was spouting his theories and why he believes that the election was stolen. He has a right to do that. That is not unconstitutional behavior. People might go, oh, that's stupid. He's so stupid because he's saying that. You know what? He's not stupid. There are a hell of a lot of people who look at all the facts lined up and say, that does not add up to an election that was conducted fairly. That adds up to anomalies and problems. And that's the basis behind this. It's not just to have Donald Trump stay in office. It's the one that says, not by your leave, assholes. You're not going to tell me that this election was won freely when we've got eyes to see what's gone on. There are many, many people, multiple tens of millions of people who do not believe that this election was conducted fairly. They believe that there were problems with the election. Many people in that lot believe Donald Trump probably didn't lose. Trump has a right to protest that. He has a right to seek every legal recourse he can do. And every legal recourse he has tried is constitutionally protected. Today, when those people left his rally, walked over to the Capitol building, if you don't know the mall in D.C., it's that long mall. If you're looking at a map and the Lincoln Memorial is down here on this end, the Capitol building's up here on this end, the White House is in the middle, Washington Monument in the middle, and the Jefferson Memorial? What's on the other side there? Why don't I know that side as well? But you can walk from the White House. It takes you about 10 minutes to walk over to the Capitol building. Then the Smithsonian's way over here and all of that. So they walked, a crowd of 50,000 people pretty much shuffled over to the Capitol building because they knew that hearings were taking place. The objection to the certification of the Electoral College. We won't get into all that stuff. That's what was going on, and they were there to voice their concerns. If you look at pictures of those crowds, nobody was doing anything negative. They were standing there waving flags, showing their support for the sitting president, saying, "We do not believe he lost the election." That's all they were doing. Now you had your instigators. Obviously, your instigators that broke into the Capitol building. I think you had I saw awful lot of red MAGA hats in the Capitol building too. But I saw on some of the cameras from the Capitol building, the rotunda, people were in the Capitol building after it had been broken. They're just kind of walking around. Nobody's destroying anything. You had a couple of people, what did they steal the gavel of Nancy Pelosi's, or somebody tipped over the podium. But you also saw this beautiful rotunda with all these statues lined all around it. I didn't see a single statue smashed. I didn't see a single fire set. Yet I see the left, well, it'll be that way, the left trying to say what an egregious thing this was that Trump supporters went into the Capitol, or Trump supporters were even gathering for this false thing. It's unconstitutional. It's undemocratic. You know, you never get closer to democracy in its purest form than when your people are allowed to protest an election. When you have a free election, that's the first thing. When you have the right to protest a free election, a right to challenge it, a right to take it to court, a right to look at all the facts and insist that the government investigate it. That is all within the constitutional protections for elections in this nation. That's all Donald Trump has done. I don't care what hype you are hearing out there, what bloviated idiot is telling you that, oh, it's just over, concede already. You know, he lost, it's over. You know what? Shut up. It's over when it's over. The president has a right to the challenge. And if one court turns it down, he has a right to take it to the higher court. People say, well, it's been turned down in every court of law. That found that there's no evidence. Not true. If you walk away from this with one thing tonight, walk away with this. None of the evidence was proven to be false, fake, or not efficacious. These cases were all turned down perfunctorily because it was either the wrong process, the wrong court to take it to. They didn't present enough of a case for a judge to want it. But in most cases, all it was the judge saying, you got to go on to the next court up. They were denied sometimes because the judge that heard them was not a judge that supported Trump. They're not supposed to rule out of bias, but they do. We all know this. So there's not a single case that was filed and gone in front of a judge that was turned down for lack of evidence. They were all turned down before the real evidence was allowed to be presented. That's why they kept going up, and they went up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court didn't turn it down because there was no evidence. Read why the Supreme Court turned it down a few weeks ago. They turned it down because they said that the people filing it, had no right to file a case from Pennsylvania and represent other states, the 4 states that they had up at 4 or 5 states. That's the reason it was turned down. We're not going to hear that case because rule of law or point of procedure, you don't have the authority to rule this or present this case on the sake of another state. That's why it was turned down, not because they saw any evidence or were allowed to see evidence or allowed to even have evidence presented. That's the misnomer in a lot of this. So if anybody tells you, oh, it's all been disproven in court. No, it hasn't, because cases have never been presented in court. They had some instances had preliminary hearings where the judge said, okay, you've talked enough. I'm going to deny it. Just denies the case. There's lack of evidence. I'm going to deny it. They're like, well, why don't you give us a court case and we'll present all the evidence? It's a preliminary hearing. But Scotty, that's not what the mainstream media and blue check marks on Twitter are saying. Ain't that the truth, James? And then Twitter, what does Twitter do now? Twitter has banned the president of the United States from Twitter under the guise that he's just inciting violence. What a bunch of fucking idiots run Twitter. I got to tell you. That's my 2 cents with the F word thrown in for good measure. So, all of this that happened today, what it apparently turns out to be, you watch who New York Post interviewed some guy on tape. Go watch it. Interviewing one of the Trump supporters who broke into the Capitol. And he's a guy who kind of talks like this, and he's like, oh yeah, well, I believe Trump should be president. Blah, blah. He's wearing a Viking helmet and a breastplate and, whatever. He's a little tainted. Meanwhile, 49,000 other supporters are standing and peacefully protesting outside. Well, who got into the Capitol building? I didn't see a head count. But when I look at pictures and some of the video, 50 people? 50 out of 50,000? 1% of them are idiots? How many people burned down the city of Minneapolis in peaceful protest about the George Floyd incident? Well, the left disavows them. Well, they're not the peaceful protesters. Well, you know what? The people who broke into the Capitol today are not the Trump-supporting peaceful protesters. They're idiot zealots. Well, that's the danger of having Trump as president. He creates zealots. You don't think there's other zealots for other political parties? You don't think there's other zealots for other? Okay, we're going to leave it at that. I'm going to start kicking a dead horse here very quickly. So you see where I'm going with this and why I wanted to say something about this. I did want to mention something here, and this is very important. Remember, you heard that one person died today, and it was not at the hands of a protester. It was somebody who was shot by Capitol Police. Oh, but it doesn't matter because she's white. I saw more people saying, this is why white privilege doesn't get you shot because you're white, and Capitol Police. You know what? Ashley Babbitt was white. She's a rather good-looking woman. Very strong. She's military. She was an Air Force vet from California, Ashley Babbitt. The President Trump supporter who was killed in the Capitol building on Wednesday is an Air Force vet from California who tweeted a day earlier how nothing will stop us, she said, and the storm is here. Ashley Babbitt, who had 14 years in the service and did 4 tours of duty, was married and lived near San Diego, with her husband. The day before she was fatally shot, apparently by Capitol Police. Apparently. It was by Capitol Police. It was caught on film. It's not even apparently. She had tweeted, "Nothing will stop us. They can try and try and try, but the storm is here and it's descending upon D.C. in less than 24 hours, dark to light." This is a soldier who put her life in harm's way for we the people, so people would have the right to vote. Maybe the conflicts she was in didn't determine who got to vote, your right to vote. But overall, the military are the people who stand in the gap for those who don't. And they defend who we are and our way of life. Babbitt, who used the Twitter handle Common Ash Sense, her name was Ashley, also retweeted on Wednesday morning, a few hours ahead of her and other Trump supporters storming the Capitol, a must-be-done list before Congress meets today. And it included Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, must resign and thereafter be charged with treason. And Chief Justice John Roberts must resign from the Supreme Court. The rioters were protesting Congress's impending certification of Joe Biden as the winner of the 2020 presidential election. And Babbitt took a fatal bullet to the chest during the mayhem inside the Capitol. Somebody fired a shot into the crowd. Video footage captured the gunshot, as well as the woman crumpling to the floor. She was apparently shot by Capitol Police, law enforcement sources told the Post. This is New York Post. Responding to a tweet on Monday by conservative author Melissa Tate, saying, "Landing in D.C., here to do God's work, save the Republic." And Babbitt responded, "I will be there tomorrow, Godspeed." On Tuesday, Babbitt retweeted TV footage of a pro-Trump crowd amassing in D.C. ahead of Wednesday's riots. You know what? I don't see the New York Post saying ahead of the 50,000 peaceful protesters and the small bit of those people who rioted. They didn't do that. But they sure got on us when we tried to align the people who burned 150 of their neighbors' businesses in Minneapolis last June. When anybody tried to align them with the BLM movement, "Oh, you are castigated and crucified in public." Those people weren't with us. The BLM was peaceful protesters. Well, you know what? Most of the people, the vast majority of the people there today were peaceful protesters. Babbitt's mother-in-law told Fox affiliate in D.C. she was puzzled by the behavior of her son's wife. "I really don't know why she decided to do this," the mother-in-law said, according to a reporter's tweet. So I wanted to mention her. Ashley Babbitt, killed in the Capitol Rotunda today for protesting. Not because she was wielding a gun or threatening anybody's lives, but because she broke into the Capitol, stormed the Capitol, and was being part of a... Are you part of a peaceful protest after you've broken into a building? Maybe not. They wanted to be inside the Capitol and protest. They wanted to go to the floor of the Senate and protest, or the House. And so Ashley Babbitt, remember her, she was killed today. Was she killed because she was a revolutionary? Was she killed because she was a criminal? Or was she killed because she went somewhere to stand for what she believed in and did it the wrong way, and somebody shot her? Was she burning down somebody's home? Somebody's business? Was she trying to take away somebody's way of life? Was she part of a peaceful protest that burned down 150 businesses? And I can talk about that because you know what? I'm right outside Minneapolis. I grew up in Minneapolis. My old studio was in that neighborhood that got burned down. I'm very familiar with the place. Not that that matters really, other than it gives me some preachy rights. That was my old neighborhood. So she lost her life today. Here's to you, Ashley Babbitt. Maybe you shouldn't have been there. Maybe you shouldn't have stormed into the Capitol building. You were there for a peaceful protest. You wanted to see something get done. You were expressing your right as a citizen to peaceful protest until you maybe broke a window or a door and rushed inside where you weren't supposed to be. Broke the law. But you didn't need to die for that. She wasn't there to kill anybody. And I wouldn't be surprised if the press wants to plant a weapon on her. Oh, God, I said it, didn't I? No, I don't think that's really going to happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're hoping that she had a weapon on her. So they can justify it. Oh, this is just a Trump supporter. So it's okay if she gets shot. What else is out there? Mitch McConnell blasts the pro-Trump thugs who stormed the Capitol in a failed insurrection. Was it an insurrection? Was it really an insurrection today? Somebody look up the definition of the word insurrection. Okay, I'll do it. Insurrection. What does insurrection mean? A violent uprising against an authority or a government. Is breaking into the Capitol building to protest, is that an insurrection? Some people are going to want to tell you it was. I don't think it was an insurrection. But I think they were people who wanted to be heard by the people they elected and put in office. Mitch McConnell blasted the thugs who broke into the U.S. Capitol, and maybe rightfully so. They shouldn't have done that. We will not bow to lawlessness or intimidation, said Mitch McConnell. We are back at our posts. We'll discharge our duty under the Constitution for our nation. We're going to do it tonight. It's Mitch McConnell. What else is in the news? Pence declares, let's get back to work as the session resumes after the Capitol siege. Good for you, Mike. People are mad at him because he said, I don't think it's my right to stand up here as the vice president in the Senate and cast a vote to undo the Electoral College. He says, I'm here as an observer. I'm here to make sure the rules are obeyed. I am not here to cast a vote on this. Good for him. Twitter, in another, these are all New York Post, by the way, articles. Twitter removes tweets from President Trump and locks up his account. So suddenly the president of the United States is no longer to speak on Twitter. Why? Because the bosses at Twitter say, oh, he's inciting violence. Go to hell, Twitter. Go do an anatomically unlikely thing to yourself. And that's funny because they want their freedom of speech. And yeah, they're a private company. They can set the rules, all the rules they want. But you know what? They don't let you experience the same thing they want because they own it. It's their money. I can tell you what to do. Trump will never concede, says the Daily Wire, amid explosion of bulls. Our country has had enough, said Trump. I want to thank you. It's just a great honor to have this kind of crowd and to be before you and hundreds of thousands of American patriots who are committed to the honesty of our elections and the integrity of our glorious republic, said Trump. Such bad, naughty words. Almost 75 million people voted for our campaign, the most of any incumbent president by far in the history of our country. 12 million more people than 4 years ago. He lost this election by almost 14 million more votes than Obama got on his re-election. Let you know. Well, everybody was enraged and fired. They wanted to get him out of office. That's where you see all the anomalies come in. So blah, blah, blah. We're going to leave that alone now. There is my... Yeah, there's incitement for you, James. There's a video of Trump saying, leave peacefully, go home. Home many months after January 20th. Did Democrats chant, not my president? Yeah, they did. That's all we heard for 4 years. So there you go, folks. Has there ever been a time in history where things such as today have been scheduled like this, said Roger Rabbit. Look at all the things over the last few years. We know the schedule and the dates of it all. I told people, I usually have good open Discord course on my Facebook and my social media. I told a couple of different people today to fuck off. I said, you know what? I said, if you want to have a debate here and talk about this and have a good conversation, let's go. But when you start using rhetoric, leftist rhetoric or hyperbole, you know what? Shut the fuck up. Okay. Folks, that's where I am today. We're out of time, believe it or not. I could go for 2 more hours, frankly. Sorry we didn't get to the lesson today about Enoch. We'll pick that up tomorrow. The only way we won't get there is if more of this kind of stuff comes up and we need to talk about it. So there you go. Don't leave yet. I'm not done. It's going to sound like I'm wrapping it right here, but let me just say, I hope that you enjoy it. It seems like the wrong word to use for this show. I didn't want you to enjoy it as much as I wanted you to understand it. And you don't have to agree with me. Hell, my own daughters don't have to agree with me. But what I do require is mutual respect from everybody. If you want to agree with me, agree with me. If you want to disagree with me, disagree with me. You start calling me names and you've crossed the line and you're going to open the door to some... I will tell you what, I can fight with the best of them. I can scrap with the best of them. I can insult with the best of them. I keep those things out of my discourse because I do not want people to ever look back at me and point the finger and go, look, he's calling us names. What? Boo-hoo. So what? I've had more people tell me, well, I heard you say this and that. No, you didn't. You know why? Because I've had a policy to never say that kind of thing. That's why. Same here, Kelly. Kelly said something that I've said already. Joe Biden is more than likely going to be seated as the new president. And you know what? I said a few weeks ago. I said, I don't believe he won, but you know what? He'll be seated, and you know what he'll get? He'll get my respect as an American citizen. He'll say, oh, he's not my president. I even have people that are good people trying to convince me, well, you shouldn't accept him as your president because he did not win. It was a stolen election. I go, I get that. I get all of that. But I already came out and said, made a very public statement about it. I've said it on this show before. If Joe Biden becomes the president, he is my president. If he is seated as president by the electorate, by the Congress, sworn in, whether he deserves to be there or not, you know what? He's the president of the United States. And I will respect his office. And frankly, and I've said it before, I don't think Joe is behind any of the things of the chicanery I think that took place. I honestly, and I don't say this to be cruel or mean or stupid, I don't think Joe is all there, so I don't think he really gets all that at this point. But Joe is somebody who, while during the 40 years he was in office, 40 plus years, he was somebody I liked him. I thought he was a fair person. Didn't agree with him or his agenda, but I always liked Joe Biden. I thought he was a decent man. This, of course, is before all the, oh, he touches girls and all that. And you know what? Everybody does in an election. It's always something to pull out about somebody. I don't know what to believe about that stuff. I will tell, but we've seen videos and all that. We know what he's like, but leave that alone. I'm not going there. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I always thought that Joe Biden was a good man. I thought they dragged him into this election kicking and screaming. I don't think he wanted to do this. At first, they convinced him he should. And did he really run for president, or did the Democratic system run him as president to be president? That's what I think is more the truth of the matter. I have heard he's not even going to do his inaugural address on the Capitol steps this year. He's going to do it from his basement or inside or wherever. I'd be like, fuck y'all. I'm doing it on the steps. So, hey, Electra. And James and Matthew. I didn't say hi to anybody tonight. Mutual respect's a given, right? Niall? I agree. So if he becomes our president, I will respect him as the president. I may not, and maybe just like Obama, I didn't agree with a damn thing Obama had to say or his agenda. I was not bowled over by his slickness, but I respected him as president. I said, he is the president of the United States. And you know what? If you're a citizen of the United States, he's damn well going to be your president, whether you like it, him, the process, or not. And you know what? Not to get too deep into the rhetoric, but maybe Kamala Harris will be the president instead very soon. And I'll refer to him as President Biden. I will not call him 46. I will not, as people did with Trump. They wouldn't even say his name. What a bunch of fucking idiots. Pardon my French. How to close out a show using the F-bomb again. Such fuckery. This is my country. Land that I love. And if something's going wrong, I still love my country. And you know what? I have got to think with all the rhetoric and the talk about, well, now there's the Democratic president. There is all his administration. There's a Democratic House and there's a Democratic Senate. The Republicans have been pretty much shut down, even though they were all razor-thin races. You see the races in Georgia today, how close they were? Unbelievable. You look at the presidential race. I don't care if you lost by 7 million votes. If you have 75 million people voting for you, 75 million people voting for you. That's nothing to shake a stick at. So having said all of that, let's wrap this up. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Let me look at some of your comments before I take off. Scott Allen, good to see you, by the way. I see Harris is president before the year's over, too. Joe Biden's he's going to cack, or he's going to be put in a retirement home. I don't know which one. Yeah, the system ran him to get Kamala in there, most liberal senator in the Senate. You know, it's funny. I thought it very funny, too, that Kamala Harris was the first person in all the Democratic hopefuls last summer to drop out of the race. Why'd she drop out? Because she didn't have any numbers. Nobody wanted her. And she's chosen to be the vice president for a president that's dottering. Dottering. Yeah, if we disagree, please explain to me why you think that way or what you do. And let me explain the same to you, and I don't expect to change your mind. I'm just hoping to understand where you're coming from. You know, I had some people today tell me I was inciting violence. I said, please tell me, point out the phrase I used, the sentence, the paragraph where I incited violence today. Couldn't be done. I'm just looking at some of your posts here before we wrap it. There it all is. Barbie D, if I didn't say hi, Barbie D, if you're still there. Yeah, Biden is not my president. Trump is. I believe Trump won that election. I really do. And I'm not too demented or deluded. It's called deluded by my own kid today because I believe that Trump didn't lose the election. So, what do you do with that? Yeah, Obama was way overrated. You are right. Yeah, James, you're right. That officer has to feel like shit tonight for having shot her. Don't know what was going on. Of course, remember, well, this isn't the Secret Service who shot her. The Secret Service is different. They have a mandate to protect the president. If they felt the president was in harm's way, they would shoot. But the Capitol Police? I don't know what exactly was going on, but there is video of her falling to the floor for being shot, and there's just a crowd in there. Didn't look like chaos to me. So, there we go, folks. Oh, thank you, James, by the way, for the donation. I appreciate that very much. There's a few posts that didn't get cleared here. It's because I wasn't paying attention. Sorry about that, folks. And thank you, Roger Rabbit. Boom. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm just clearing some of these posts. So, guys, thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for listening to me rant for an hour. I hope it didn't come across just as a rant, but that it made some sense. Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about Enoch. Tomorrow night's going to be a difficult Enoch. It involves a lot of numbers and a lot of really detailed information that's going to be hard to get across in radio form. But we'll do our best. And Enoch and the Freemasons, Enoch and the numbers, Enoch and the yada yada. So we'll be back tomorrow night. Same bat time, same bat channel, 9 p.m. Central Standard, 10 p.m. Eastern. We've gone over 15 minutes now tonight. Look at that. That's what I get for not paying attention. So, folks, thanks for being here. If you are not a member, click subscribe here. If you are not a member, if you have not joined this channel, please click on the join button below. And you'll see 3 different ways you can become a member. There's perks in it for you. So, thanks for being here again. We're going to take a 22 and 3/4 hour break. And we'll be right back. So, folks, you sit tight. You have a good night. Think, use your heads. Not that you don't already, just encouraging you to continue doing so. And we'll see you back here tomorrow night. Good night. Boom.